This is Hidden Origins TV, and today we explore one of the oldest and most mysterious works in human history, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. For over 3,000 years, it was the manual of eternity, placed in tombs, carved on walls, and painted on coffins. It guided kings and peasants alike through the afterlife, offering spells, prayers, and rituals to survive the dangers of death. But what was it really? And why do so many of its words sound eerily familiar to those found in later Jewish and Christian scriptures? The Book of the Dead was not a single book. It was a collection of texts, nearly 200 chapters known as spells or utterances. Each one was meant to equip the soul with knowledge, passwords, and protections for its journey after death. One of the most striking lines comes from chapter 1, a spell for entering the afterlife. Words spoken by the Osiris, the scribe Ani, O Thoth, who justifies Osiris against his enemies on that day of weighing words. Grant that I may come to you, that I may shine in the presence of the sun. This was no myth for entertainment. It was a plea, a prayer, a code. The deceased spoke directly to the gods, asking for safe passage. The Egyptians believed death was not an ending, but a dangerous voyage. Without guidance, the soul would fail. With the right knowledge, it could triumph. Was this simply religion, or was it a memory of instructions given to humanity long ago? One of the most famous parts of the Book of the Dead is the negative confessions, found in chapter 125. In this section, the soul stands before 42 divine judges and declares innocence of specific sins. The text reads, "Greater than I have not stolen, I have not slain men and women, I have not told lies, I have not defiled the wife of a man, I have not uttered falsehoods, I have not cursed a god." These words sound almost like the 10 Commandments, but they were written more than 1,000 years before Moses. Did the Hebrews borrow from Egypt, or were both preserving fragments of a universal law delivered by higher beings? The Egyptians believed that every word spoken here mattered. Each confession was not just ritual, it was proof of alignment with Ma'at, the principle of truth and balance that upheld the cosmos itself. The Book of the Dead also describes the weighing of the heart, a scene that shaped nearly every later vision of judgment. In chapter 30b, the soul cries, "O my heart, which I had from my mother, do not rise up against me as a witness. Do not oppose me before the keeper of the balance. Do not make my name stink before the great God." In this moment, the heart itself is placed on a scale against the feather of Ma'at, the symbol of truth. If the heart is light, the soul enters paradise. If it is heavy with sin, it is devoured by the monster Ammit. Anubis, the jackal-headed god, oversees the scale. Thoth, the ibis-headed scribe, records the result. And Osiris, lord of the underworld, gives the final judgment. This image, the soul weighed, sins exposed, fate sealed, would echo later in the Book of Revelation. And the dead were judged by what was written in the books according to what they had done. But the Book of the Dead was more than judgment. It was also protection. Many spells acted as passwords to pass guardians or overcome monsters. In chapter 144, the soul boasts, "I know the names of the 7 gates of the house of Osiris. The first is he who swallows shadows. The second is devourer of the sinners. The third is he who lives on snakes." These are not vague metaphors, they are instructions. The soul had to know the names of each guardian to pass unharmed. Knowledge was survival. And this raises a question. Were these just imaginative rituals, or did the Egyptians remember something real? Actual encounters with beings who guarded thresholds of the unseen world. Other passages reveal the goal of the journey, not just survival, but transformation. In chapter 43, the deceased declares, "I am yesterday, I am today, I am tomorrow. I am he who is reborn. Mighty am I among the gods." The human soul, through knowledge and ritual, becomes divine. It is no longer a petitioner, it is a god among gods. Compare this with Christ's words in Revelation, "To the one who conquers, I will grant to sit with me on my throne." Or with Enoch, who was said to become the angel Metatron. Again and again the pattern repeats. The mortal who learns the hidden laws ascends to godhood. And some passages hint at an even deeper mystery. In chapter 17, the soul proclaims, "I am he who created the gods. I am the great God who came into being of himself. My soul is God within the gods. What are we to make of this? Was it poetic exaggeration, or was it a fragment of a teaching that humanity carried for millennia, a teaching that claimed the soul itself was divine, older even than the gods?" For those who believe in the Anunnaki, the Watchers, or other ancient beings, this raises a provocative possibility. Was the Book of the Dead a record not of myth, but of contact with intelligences who revealed the structure of the afterlife? The power of the Book of the Dead lies not only in its contents, but in its survival. For centuries, these texts were placed in tombs across Egypt. Some are simple, some elaborate, but all share the same goal: to arm the dead with knowledge. Without it, the journey was perilous. With it, the soul could pass, and the echoes of these ideas would ripple across time, into Greece, into Israel, into Christianity and Islam. Heaven, hell, judgment, confession, divine scribes, cosmic balance, all appear first in Egypt's Book of the Dead. Part 1 leaves us with a clear understanding. The Book of the Dead is the world's first afterlife manual, a collection of spells and prayers designed to guide the soul through death. It contains confessions of innocence, instructions for passing guardians, and visions of judgment before the gods. And its words still ring in our ears today, echoing through the Bible and beyond. But if the Egyptians believed they were given this knowledge by Thoth, the scribe of the gods, then who was Thoth really? A mythological deity, or one of the same beings later remembered as the Watchers, the Anunnaki, and the Judges of Fate? The Book of the Dead does not simply describe judgment. It walks the soul through it step by step, like a traveler's guidebook for eternity. To the ancient Egyptians, the afterlife was not a single trial, but a series of crossings, confrontations, and declarations. Each stage demanded knowledge. Each guardian had a name, each obstacle a spell, each danger an answer. Without preparation, the soul was helpless. With the Book of the Dead, the soul had a chance. The journey begins in the tomb itself. The soul rises and speaks words of power to awaken its Ka, its vital essence. In chapter 2, the text commands, "Greater than I am he who comes forth from the waters. I have power over my heart. I have power over my mouth. I have power to be strong." These are not idle words. They are activation codes meant to give the dead control over their spirit body. The Egyptians believed that unless the soul could command itself, it could not stand before greater powers. Already we see a theme that will echo across religions. The righteous are not passive victims of death, but active participants in their destiny. From here, the soul encounters guardians and gatekeepers. In chapter 144, the book lists the names of 7 gates and their terrifying keepers. I know the names of the 7 gates of the house of Osiris. The first is he who swallows shadows. The second is devourer of the sinners. The third is he who lives on snakes. To pass, the soul must speak these names. Knowledge itself was the key. The idea is strikingly similar to later mystical traditions. In Gnostic Christianity, secret names of God were said to allow passage past hostile archons. In Jewish mysticism, angels guarding the heavenly palaces required passwords. In Enoch, the patriarch is shown heavenly gates and their watchers. Were all these traditions fragments of the same memory, an initiation given to humanity by beings who ruled the thresholds of eternity? But the greatest trial is the Hall of Judgment. Here the soul must stand before Osiris, the god of the dead, accompanied by 42 divine judges, each responsible for a specific sin. Before them, the soul recites the negative confessions, a ritual declaration of innocence. In chapter 125, the soul says, "I have not stolen, I have not slain men and women, I have not told lies, I have not defiled the wife of a man, I have not uttered falsehoods, I have not polluted myself, I have not caused pain." 42 such confessions are recited, covering nearly every aspect of morality: theft, murder, lying, adultery, blasphemy, cruelty, all denied in turn. It is as if the 10 Commandments were expanded into a detailed checklist. But the idea is the same. Every action matters, every deed is weighed, and the soul must be pure. Was this humanity's first recorded law code long before Sinai? Or was it evidence that divine law was given to multiple civilizations by the same higher intelligences, remembered in different forms? Once the confessions are spoken, the weighing of the heart begins. Anubis, the jackal-headed god, places the heart on a scale. On the other side lies the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and balance. If the heart is light, the soul has lived in harmony with truth. If it is heavy, burdened with sin, the soul is devoured by Ammit, the monster with crocodile head, lion body, and hippopotamus hindquarters. The text of chapter 30b pleads, "O my heart, which I had from my mother, do not rise up against me as a witness, do not oppose me before the keeper of the balance, do not make my name stink before the great God." The Egyptians believed the heart contained not just emotion, but memory. It could testify against you. This concept is echoed in the Bible. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. In Revelation, the dead are judged according to their works. Both traditions describe the same thing, the soul carrying its own record into eternity. Did the Egyptians uncover a universal truth? That we are all witnesses against ourselves. At the scale stands Thoth, the ibis-headed scribe. He records the verdict, writing it into the divine ledger. Osiris sits on his throne wearing the white crown of Upper Egypt, flanked by Isis and Nephthys. Behind them stand the 42 judges. Together they form a cosmic court, a divine council of judgment. Compare this to the Hebrew scriptures, where God presides over the divine council, or to the Mesopotamian Anunnaki, who were said to decree fates in assembly. Again, the parallel is clear. Across civilizations, the afterlife was not chaotic, but organized, governed by higher beings who enforced cosmic law. Was this structure invented separately, or was it remembered from a common source? If the soul passes the test, it enters paradise, the field of reeds, a place of eternal joy. In chapter 110, the deceased proclaims, "I shall eat under the sycamore tree of Hathor. I shall dwell in the field of offerings, where wheat and barley are 7 cubits high, and the ears are 2 cubits long." Here, paradise is not clouds or abstractions. It is fertile land, abundant crops, feasts beneath sacred trees. The Egyptians imagined eternity as the perfected version of their homeland. Fields rich with grain, rivers flowing endlessly, life without suffering. For them, heaven was not escape, but restoration. Compare this to the new earth described in Revelation, or to the gardens of paradise in Islamic tradition. The same vision repeats. The afterlife is not foreign, but a perfected reflection of the world we know. If the soul fails, however, annihilation awaits. A myth devours the heart, and the soul is erased. Not eternal torment, but obliteration. In this, the Egyptians differed from later Christians who imagined hell as never-ending punishment. For the Egyptians, the worst fate was non-existence, the loss of identity forever. Yet even here we can see the seeds of later ideas of hellfire and damnation, especially when combined with the torments described in other Egyptian spells. What is striking is how practical the Book of the Dead is. These were not vague promises, but concrete instructions. In chapter 17, the deceased recites, "I am he who created the gods. I am the great God who came into being of himself. My soul is God within the gods." This is not a plea for mercy. It is a declaration of identity. By speaking these words, the soul claims divine status. The Book of the Dead was not only about surviving judgment, but about becoming more than human. It gave the deceased formulas to transform into gods, to merge with eternity, to rise beyond mortality. What does it mean that the oldest afterlife text in history does not only describe salvation, but divinization? The journey of the soul in the Book of the Dead is clear. It begins with awakening, passes through gates and guardians, confesses innocence before the judges, faces the weighing of the heart, and either enters paradise or perishes. Along the way, the soul uses spells, passwords, and declarations to survive. It is a system, a cosmic structure revealed in words. And those words would echo across the centuries, shaping nearly every vision of the afterlife that followed. Part 2 leaves us with an unsettling thought. If the Egyptians were the first to write down the afterlife as a manual, then later traditions like Revelation, Enoch, and the Apocalypse of Peter may not have been entirely new. They may have been continuations of an older stream of knowledge, reframed under new names. Which forces gave humanity these instructions? Were they gods, angels, watchers, or the Anunnaki themselves? And if so, why did they want us to know the rules of eternity? By now, we see the Egyptian Book of the Dead was far more than a funerary ritual. It was a detailed system of judgment, salvation, and even deification. But the story does not end in Egypt. Its influence stretched far beyond the Nile, shaping later traditions, and in many ways being deliberately erased. Why? To answer that, we need to trace how its ideas traveled, and why they were branded pagan by those who followed. One of the clearest parallels is with the Hebrew and Christian scriptures. Consider again the negative confessions of chapter 125. I have not stolen. I have not slain men and women. I have not uttered lies. I have not defiled the wife of a man. I have not polluted myself. I have not cursed a god. These are moral laws stated in the first person, long before Moses ascended Sinai. Compare them to the 10 Commandments. You shall not murder. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. You shall not commit adultery. The pattern is unmistakable. Were the Hebrews inspired by Egypt's moral framework? Or were both recalling a deeper, older law given to humanity by higher intelligences? Even the concept of judgment by deeds resonates with Revelation. In chapter 30b, the soul pleads, "Do not rise up against me as a witness. Do not oppose me before the keeper of the balance. Do not make my name stink before the great God." Here the heart is a witness, the cosmic record keeper. Revelation 20 echoes the same idea. And the dead were judged by what was written in the books according to what they had done. Thousands of years apart, two civilizations described the same truth. Nothing is hidden, everything is recorded, and all will be weighed. Did John of Patmos, author of Revelation, inherit echoes of Egyptian wisdom? But while some concepts were adopted, others were rejected or deliberately hidden. Early Christianity viewed Egypt as a land of idols and false gods. Roman authorities reinforced this idea, branding Egyptian texts as superstition. Yet behind the rejection was irony. The very imagery of judgment, paradise, and moral confession in Christianity closely mirrored Egypt's texts. Was this rejection sincere, or was it a way to control the narrative, ensuring that Christianity appeared unique and divinely original, rather than part of a much older stream of wisdom? The Greeks, too, drew from Egypt. Herodotus, often called the father of history, admitted in the 5th century BCE that much of Greek religion came from Egypt. The Greek concept of Hades, with judges of the dead, punishments for the wicked, and paradise for the righteous, clearly parallels Egyptian ideas. Plato's writings describe the soul judged after death and assigned its place. Imagery rooted not in Greece, but in the Nile Valley. Even the Orphic mysteries, with their secret formulas to pass the guardians of the underworld, echo the passwords of the Egyptian spells. Yet in the Roman era, Egypt's wisdom was targeted. The rise of Christianity coincided with a political and cultural effort to erase competing spiritual systems. Temples were closed, scrolls destroyed, statues defaced. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, once revered, was condemned as pagan sorcery. The very civilization that pioneered humanity's first written afterlife manual was recast as a land of falsehood. Why? Perhaps because the Book of the Dead gave direct access to divine law without the mediation of a church. If individuals could navigate the afterlife using Egypt's instructions, what need was there for institutional control? Consider chapter 43, where the deceased declares, "I am yesterday, I am today, I am tomorrow, I am he who is reborn, mighty am I among the gods." This is a radical statement. It empowers the individual to identify with eternity itself. Now compare it to the Christian claim that only through Christ can one conquer death. Both offer salvation, but one depends on institutional mediation, the other on secret knowledge. Which would Rome prefer to promote, and which would it seek to bury? Conspiracies of suppression become even clearer when we see how Egypt's wisdom influenced the so-called heretical texts of early Christianity. The Gnostics, for example, taught that souls must pass hostile archons after death, giving secret names and formulas to escape. This is nearly identical to the Egyptian spells for passing gatekeepers. Greater than, "I know the names of the 7 gates of the house of Osiris." The Church declared such teachings heresy. But were they simply echoes of Egypt, too close to the original for comfort? By the time of Constantine, the Christian canon was being finalized. Certain texts were included, others banned. Egyptian influence was scrubbed away, and yet hints remained. The Apocalypse of Peter, which we discussed in another episode, vividly describes sinners punished according to their crimes, a concept rooted not in Hebrew scripture but in Egyptian afterlife scenes. Why then was the Apocalypse of Peter banned? Because it revealed too clearly the continuity between Egyptian and Christian visions of the afterlife. To acknowledge this would have shattered the illusion of originality. Even Islam carries echoes. The Quran describes scales of justice weighing deeds, a paradise of gardens, and a record of every action written down. These images parallel the Book of the Dead almost exactly. The transmission of ideas across time cannot be ignored. But why do official histories downplay Egypt's role? Why are we told these ideas emerged independently rather than admitting a shared origin? The deeper conspiracy may be this. Civilizations across the world were given glimpses of the afterlife by the same higher powers. The Egyptians called them Thoth, Osiris, and Anubis. The Hebrews called them Enoch and the Watchers. The Sumerians called them the Anunnaki. Each culture remembered them in different forms. But the core was the same. The soul judged, deeds weighed, knowledge as power. To admit this would collapse the boundaries between religions. It would suggest they all sprang from a common source, one that modern authorities, religious and secular alike, may not want us to acknowledge. Part 3 leaves us with a pressing question. If Egypt's Book of the Dead shaped Revelation, the Gnostic texts, and even Islamic visions of judgment, why was it demonized? Why were its temples closed, its scrolls burned, its gods mocked as demons? Was it because the text was false, or because it was too true, too close to the original stream of forbidden knowledge? And if it was the first afterlife manual, then perhaps later scriptures were not new revelations at all, but edited fragments of something far older. Which leads us to the final mystery. Who gave this knowledge to Egypt in the first place? Were they gods, angels, or the Anunnaki themselves? By now we've seen how the Book of the Dead guided souls through judgment, shaped later religions, and was suppressed to protect new traditions from exposure. But the deepest mystery remains. Where did this knowledge come from? Did the Egyptians invent it? Or did someone or something give it to them? The Egyptians themselves were clear. The Book of the Dead was a divine gift written by Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, who was also called the scribe of the gods. Thoth's role is striking. He records judgment at the scales, he writes down the fates of souls, and he teaches humanity the words of power. In chapter 183, Thoth is invoked directly. Hail to you, Thoth, who vindicates Osiris against his enemies. Grant that I may be among the followers of Horus on this day of judgment. Thoth here is not only a divine scribe, he is an advocate, a mediator, a keeper of cosmic law. Compare this to Enoch, taken into heaven in Hebrew tradition, shown the places of the dead, and told to record the destinies of mankind. Both Thoth and Enoch are scribes of eternity. Could these figures, separated by geography and culture, represent memories of the same type of being, a watcher or Anunnaki emissary tasked with recording law and teaching humanity? Another key figure is Anubis, the jackal-headed god of the dead. Anubis weighs the heart, guides souls, and guards the scales. His role as a psychopomp, a guide of souls, is echoed in Greek Hermes, in Roman Mercury, and even in later Christian angels said to lead the dead to judgment. In the Book of the Dead, Anubis is described in chapter 162. Hail to you, Anubis, Lord of the sacred land, who lays hold of hearts, who guards the body in the tomb, who watches over the embalming. Anubis was not a punisher, but a protector, ensuring the dead were guided properly. Yet later traditions demonized him, turning jackal-headed figures into images of evil. Was this demonization deliberate? Was it an attempt to erase his role as humanity's original guide? And then there is Osiris, the ruler of the underworld. In every judgment scene, he sits enthroned, flanked by Isis and Nephthys, receiving the verdict from Thoth and Anubis. His role is final arbiter, the king who grants eternal life. In chapter 42, the deceased addresses him directly. Hail to you, Osiris, Lord of eternity, King of the gods, whose name endures forever and ever. May I enter your presence, may I stand before your throne. Osiris is a god who died, was dismembered, resurrected, and then became judge of the dead. Compare this to Christ, who dies, resurrects, and becomes judge of all souls. Compare it again to Dumuzi/Tammuz of Mesopotamia, who dies and rises in the underworld. The pattern is undeniable. We're Osiris, Tammuz, and Christ, all variations of a primordial archetype, a role played by a being remembered in different ways. Or, more provocatively, were they actual entities, part of a lineage of divine kings who guided humanity? The Book of the Dead also describes the Council of the Gods, 42 judges who assess the soul's confessions. This is not far from Mesopotamian traditions of the Anunnaki, who gathered in council to decree destinies. In the Enuma Elish, the gods assemble to decide the fate of creation. In Enoch, the Watchers assemble to judge mankind. In Revelation, the thrones of heaven surround the divine throne, with elders casting their crowns. Always, the image of a divine council appears. Did the Egyptians preserve the original blueprint of this council, one that echoes through every major religion? One of the most esoteric parts of the Book of the Dead is the claim that the soul itself can become a god. In chapter 17, the deceased proclaims, "I am he who created the gods. I am the great God who came into being of himself. My soul is God within the gods. What are we to make of this? Either it is poetic exaggeration, or it is a remnant of a secret teaching, that humanity carries a spark of divinity capable of ascending to the ranks of the gods." In Mesopotamia, the Anunnaki were said to have created humanity, but also to have shared fragments of their power. In Genesis, humanity is made in the image of God. In Gnostic tradition, the soul is a shard of the divine trapped in flesh. Could these all be variations of the same teaching, that within humanity lies something eternal, something godlike? The conspiracy deepens when we consider why this text was buried, both literally and metaphorically. The Egyptians buried copies in tombs to ensure survival. Later empires buried its memory to ensure control. The wisdom of the Book of the Dead gave individuals power to face the afterlife without priestly intermediaries. It gave them passwords, formulas, declarations of power. In short, it gave them independence. For institutions built on mediating salvation, such independence was dangerous. Better to brand it pagan sorcery than admit its truths. And yet, echoes of the Book of the Dead live on in modern accounts of near-death experiences. People who have clinically died often report leaving their bodies, passing through tunnels, encountering beings of light, and undergoing judgment, a life review where their deeds are weighed. Some describe guardians, councils, or even libraries where their lives are recorded. These reports, separated by thousands of years from ancient Egypt, sound eerily similar. The stages of the soul's journey, the judgment of the heart, the record of deeds, it is all there. Could near-death experiences be modern glimpses of the same process described in the Book of the Dead? The Egyptians said their manual was revealed by gods. The Hebrews said Enoch was taken by angels. The Mesopotamians said the Anunnaki decreed destinies. Today, experiencers of NDES describe councils of light and cosmic law. Across time and space, the story remains the same. Death is not the end, but a transition overseen by higher intelligences. The names change, but the pattern endures. Part 4 leaves us with the ultimate question. If the Book of the Dead was humanity's first afterlife manual, who were the true authors? Were they mythic gods invented by imagination, or were they real beings? Thoth, Anubis, Osiris, the Watchers, the Anunnaki, who shaped humanity's understanding of life and death. If so, then every vision of judgment, from Revelation to modern near-death accounts, may not be separate traditions at all, but echoes of the same original encounter. The afterlife has rules. The soul has a path. And long ago, someone taught us how to walk it.